Other general tips to improve productivity, prioritizing meals and drinks and snacks. I think we already touched on this a little bit, but you can't be at your best academically if you're not fulfilling your most basic needs. So your sleep and your food, those are, and exercise, right? Those are key parts of the overall picture of you. And keeping in mind, okay, have I had lunch today? Have I had breakfast today? These are important. And they're, again, things that tend to get pushed to the wayside, but really prioritizing them and making it a point to get a healthy breakfast to start your day off right is really key. And I included a link in the slides here to a government website that looks at some foods that have actually been associated in clinical trials to improve memory and improve mental awareness and focus. And these include things like whole grains, right? Because if we're eating simple sugars, sure, we'll get a burst of energy, but then we tend to crash because we digest that really, really quickly and it's quickly processed. If we do whole grains, it takes a longer time for our body to really process those. So we get a much more steady stream of energy throughout our day. Things like an ergonomic setup. So this looks different for different people. As Leahy said, that meant taking the armrests off the chair so she was sitting up straight. For me, this means a standing desk. If I am sitting, I am not paying attention. So I got a nice $10 cardboard box, basically, off Amazon that they call a standing desk, and it gets the job done. And I'm definitely more engaged, and I don't feel like I'm melting into my seat for 8 hours a day. And the financial aid office can actually help you defray the cost for an ergonomic setup. So definitely contact them if you think that's something that you would want to pursue. Watching recordings at 2 times speed. This tends to be something that comes up a lot while Leahy and I work with students, and they say it with this guilt of, oh, I shouldn't be watching things on 2 times speed. But the reality is if we do, there are a couple benefits, right? One, we obviously get through it faster. 2, we can pause and rewind as necessary, which you can't do in a regular lecture. And 3, if it's a little bit faster, we tend to have to rush and take down only the most basic notes. So we can't afford to write down every single thing the professor says for a full 50-minute lecture. Instead, it forces me to ask, okay, what is the most important part? And as Leahy said, maybe 6 words, right? Maybe I take a 6-word bullet point on every slide the professor brings up. And I can reference the slides after the fact, but I can't reference sort of my mentality as I'm sitting here listening and reflecting. So watching on 2 times speed and accelerating that process can actually force me to engage a little bit more than you'd expect. And when doing that, watching the lectures in your normal classes time slot can help you stay accountable and on a schedule. It's very easy to fall several lectures behind if you tell yourself, oh yeah, I'll watch them eventually. A lot of us will not watch them eventually. So if you can find, okay, I work 10 to 12 in the same time slot that I'd usually go to my math class if I were going synchronously, then you can hold yourself from falling more than, let's say, 1 or 2 lectures behind at any given point and prevent that anxiety right before an exam where you're trying to play catch up. As Leahy mentioned earlier, switching locations is necessary. If we're sitting in the same spot at the same desk in the same room for 8 hours, it becomes really monotonous and it's hard to stay focused. If I can say, all right, well, I'm going to go sit at my kitchen table now and I'm going to sit at my desk later, and trying to frame that around how engaged we need to be. So personally, if I need to actually be focused and talking, I'm at my desk. If I'm kind of just sitting and listening to a lecture a little bit more passively, I'll sit at the kitchen table, and figuring out what works for you and trying to optimize that can really be helpful. And finally, if nothing else, if you walk away with absolutely nothing from this lecture other than this, it should be that you should never be overly self-critical. And I think we're all guilty of this. We all hold ourselves to this really high standard. We're at Stanford. We got to do everything really well all the time. The reality is remote learning is a new experience for everyone involved, including you, including the professors, including us. So being accepting of the fact that we're all still learning how to do this, and just having a constant growth mindset and asking yourself what worked, what didn't, and focusing more on the successes is ultimately really important in just keeping you sane in what's a really challenging time for a lot of people.